This is the process shot. I'm Michael. I'm probably stuck in a science experiment, and I've seen The Fly, the classic sci-fi horror feature from 1958, directed by Kurt Neumann. It follows the curious case of the death of scientist André Delambre, apparently at the hands of his wife Helene. While she admits to the crime, she refuses to explain why she did it. Soon, however, she becomes obsessed with finding a fly with a white head and arm to the point of presumed madness. Assuming that finding it will lead to a full story, her brother-in-law Francois claims to have found the insect, but the story he gets is far from anything he might have expected. It involves Andre, his science experiments with matter transportation, a simple mistake that leads to a terrible mutation, and the persistent love of his wife that leads to his tragic demise. From that description, this movie sounds more like a sci-fi drama than a horror film, and that's really not too far from the truth. There is definitely less of an actual horror element in this film than in most movies I've seen, with the only real scares being in the body horror elements, and even those are pretty tame. The story really does end up being more about the tension surrounding the murder investigation, as well as some character drama, resulting in a more somber story than it is spooky. It's actually a somewhat refreshing subversion, even if it ends up feeling a bit more like a cautionary tale or a tragic romance than anything truly within the horror genre. When it comes to the characters themselves, they do fall a bit more into roles within the story rather than as fleshed characters in their own right, even with the amount of development that is shared within the framing story, which, in retrospect, could have easily just been there to pad out that part of the film. Whatever the case, the major performances seem to be a primary focus, with a rather good portrayal of silent anger and frustration from Andre after his laboratory accident. But in the long run, it feels a bit more like they were banking on star power or recognizable names than anything else. The technical aspects of The Fly also seem a bit pared back, making the production almost feel like a B-movie with enough money for color and widescreen. It certainly makes the most of its color design, with a good contrast between the brighter, if not optimistic, domestic life for Helene and Andre, and the colder basement laboratory where he hides away after his accident. Set design in general is nice and detailed, making these locations feel luxurious and lived in rather than stripped down to their bare essentials. Cinematography doesn't do much with its wider scope, preferring to center its focus on the main subjects instead of framing them in an expressive manner, but it still gets the job done. The same could be said for the makeup and special effects as well, which vary in quality at times, but are certainly effective at getting what the filmmakers wanted through to the audience. It's really within these effects that the film reaches a sense of horror, but again, it's pretty much limited to that. Otherwise, I'd suppose I'd stick with the notion of this movie being a B-movie with a high budget, or at least with enough of a sense to put in more effort than might have been called for. Even if it doesn't seem like the film deserves a place within the horror genre, I'd say that it still fits in naturally with science fiction, and that it could potentially be one of the most unique sci-fi films of its time. The Fly, Kurt Neumann, 1958. 4 stars. I definitely recommend giving it a watch. That's it for this review. If you liked it, leave a like. If you didn't, leave a comment. Subscribe to the channel for more reviews. I'm actually wondering if this movie would be remembered if it were just a normal B movie. You know, black and white, 4x3, that sort of thing. At the very least, if it were remembered, it would show that the story had longevity